Hi, it's Christy here. What I want to talk to you about today was a model, a process for healing from grief and what that really looks like. I had someone email me quite recently who is studying at university and was doing a paper on grief, and he did not buy into the normal 5 stages of grief stuff. And so he went looking for other things to present, and so he found his way to me. And asked me what I would suggest as a model. So I thought it might help if I also shared my answer here with you. Now, I've written on it before. I comment a lot on it, the 5 stages of grief, so I'm not going to get too much into that, but just to say I'm very openly dismissive of it, which was how this guy found me. There's a lot of work now thoroughly debunking it. There's a lot of great research. There's a lot of great work written, a lot of great articles, just showing it's completely full of holes. And probably the most important, actually all you need to do is read Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's books with an open mind and asking some questions and seeing where the 5 stages of grief came from, how that developed, what it actually is, and what it isn't. To know that it's just not useful. It's really not useful at all, not if you want to heal. And I've yet to come across anybody who's completely healed from grief who still buys into that model. It has nothing to offer in terms of healing. And probably the most important thing to know about it then is that the 5 stages of grief was simply a model of observation. It wasn't a process to get anywhere. It wasn't to achieve anything. It wasn't to help you get to healing. It was really just an observation of what some people going through a certain experience were feeling some of the time, and noting that down. That's really what it's come from. And I've written about it before and probably write a lot more about it in the future. But that's the thing to know. If you want to go on a path to healing, then you've got to leave the 5 stages of grief behind. I put no stock in it whatsoever, none. It really is not of any use at all on a path to complete healing. And as I said, I think I'd be very surprised to find anybody who has completely healed who still talks about the 5 stages. So what I'm going to present instead is a model for healing, a process for healing. How do you get there? Now, I have my process, my 9-step grief process, and I know some other people who also do amazing grief work, a handful of them, and their processes are completely different to mine. We all work very differently, but it's about that outcome, about getting to healing. So to my mind, there are 5 main steps that you need to go through to get to a place of complete healing, free from grief, when you've had someone in your life die. And here is what that looks like. The first one is a willingness to heal, which is actually not that common. We've been taught a lot of things about grief and death since we were children, and we've been given a lot of beliefs about grief, and very, very predominant other beliefs in society that grief is love, that grief is connection, that grief is memory, that it's right to be in grief, that the amount of grief you're in is a show of how much you cared about this person. So there's all sort of beliefs that mean that for a lot of people, they aren't really interested in the concept of healing. So you do have to have, first and foremost, a willingness to get there. You have to have in you a desire to heal completely and to do what it takes to get there. So without that willingness, it's, to use the analogy of fitness, if you don't have a desire to get fit, it's probably not going to happen. It's not just going to accidentally happen to you just going about your ordinary day-to-day work. For people who are very fit, typically there is a willingness, and it's the same with healing from grief. You have to want that for it to be able to happen. So first step is that willingness. Second is you have to go through whatever it is that's going on for you around a death. Now, this can be completely different for each person. It can be wildly different from you to the next person, to a last death you're at, to the last death you experienced to this one. It's very different each time, but the most important thing is just that you express and feel fully whatever's going on for you. And I think of this as going through the shit. You have to go through the shit, whatever that looks like. And that experience may be really bad. It may be the worst thing you've ever experienced. It may be actually not what you expected at all. Maybe a loving and peaceful and joyful experience. That can happen for people too. Whatever it is, it's important that you go through that. So for myself, I never take on a client, very, very early, because somebody who was to approach me, say, the day after a death, it's just about avoiding what there is for you to go through. So you are human. You are meant to experience whatever your feelings bring up for you. You're not meant to be immune. You're not meant to be able to kind of avoid every experience and skip straight through it. At least I don't believe that. And there's a lot to be gained. That's what people don't realize. Through whatever you have to go through is where a lot of the growth, a lot of change happens. So there's a lot of meaning in that. So I know there can be sometimes some confusion about my take on it, because I talk about healing, but I also talk about the importance of going through your emotions. And I think people tend to think it's one or the other. Either you go through grief, which means you stay in grief, most people believe that, or you just get on with your life and leave it behind. But it's not about that. It's about you have to go through whatever your initial experience is so that you can then move on to a path to healing. So it is about going through emotion. It's not about staying there. You're not meant to take up residence there permanently. But it is about going through, honestly, whatever is going on for you, and then being able to move on to a healing path. So that's the second step. The third step is a good foundation of self-care and self-love. Now, we don't live in a very self-loving society. If you look at marketing and advertising, a lot of it all works very simply around this truth that there's not a huge amount of self-love going on in our society. This is how advertising works, by telling us this thing will make you better, this thing will make you happier, this thing will make you enough. So it's, don't feel bad if you're not in a place of great self-love. We weren't really raised in a great self-loving society. But that's really, really important. If you want to get somewhere that's hugely different, if you want to be able to heal completely from grief, you have to believe that you deserve it. So that's one of the reasons why a good base of self-care and self-love is really, really important. And the other is, these are your foundations. Everything grows out from your foundation of self-love. And that needs to be more stable. Otherwise, you're working on a very, very wobbly foundation. And I've seen this time and again with clients I've worked with. We've always had to get that piece straight first before we're able to move on, because otherwise the ground is just too wobbly. The good news with self-love is, I know it can feel challenging when you realize that you don't have a huge amount of self-love. And what are you meant to do about that? The good news is, this isn't about massive changes. This isn't about being able to look in the mirror and go, my God, I love you every day. It's about tiny but consistent changes in the way you treat yourself. And they only have to be so small before you start to really notice a difference. That is the beautiful thing about it. These tiny changes that you make will pay off exponentially, and that they really do. It really is just about the small things. So that's the third step. Good basis of self-care, self-love. The fourth is a crucial step. Well, all of these are, and to my mind, you cannot do one until you've come through the other. But this is about whatever your beliefs are. The grief you go through and how long you stay in that doesn't have as much to do with who died, how they died, the circumstances of their death, as it does to do with your beliefs about grief. As I mentioned earlier, we have been told all sorts of things. We've been told you can never heal. We've been told that would be wrong. We've been told grief is love. We've been told grief is what's left of that person after they died. If you believe any of these things, you will stay in grief. If you believe grief is love, if you equate your grief with love, you would never give that up. If you think you're giving up the love of the person, you will never give that up. This is the reason why people stay in grief. These beliefs are very, very strong. A lot of them are universal throughout our society, at least through Western society. And it's these beliefs that will keep you stuck. And before you can go any further, they need to be undone. So examine your own beliefs. Examine what reasons you have for not wanting to move on. If someone was to offer you the opportunity to be completely free of grief, examine whatever resistance you have towards that idea. I've only met, I think, twice have I met clients who didn't have huge resistance to that. So it's very, very normal. And I had the same in myself when I went through this. So have a look at what that resistance is for you. And the good thing is that these beliefs often don't stand up to logic when you really look at them thoroughly and question them. So look at whatever resistance you have to healing from grief. Look at whatever beliefs you have about why you need to keep the grief, because those need undoing. So that is the fourth step. I know that it's like a lot of these steps, it's hard to do on your own, but that's what the fourth step is, to undo all of those beliefs. The fifth step in healing from grief is then, once you've done all this, to be able to look all the way around death. Death has two sides. We've been very much taught to see it as a one-sided, bad, terrible, regrettable thing that you want to avoid, that only brings pain. Death is change and it's growth, and there is another side to it as well. There is a positive side as well as a negative side, like everything in life. There is there is meaning and there is beauty to be found in it. It's not whether it's there, it's just you have to look to find it. And there's a number of reasons to do that, but one of them is when you find meaning and beauty in somebody's death, when you see how their death changed the world, contributed to your life, when you see perfection in their life just as it was, you add meaning to their life. When we don't see any meaning, any beauty, any importance in somebody's death, we take meaning from their life because that is part of their life. It's a very important part of their life. It's part of their story. It's the last chapter of who they are. So it's really important to be able to look all the way around death, to see the meaning in it, to see the beauty in somebody's life just as it was, because that is the reality of their life. To be able to see the gifts and the good that come out of their death so you can honor them even more greatly and honor yourself. When you have done that, when you've been able to see that all the way around, it will completely change the way you feel about death. This is where healing happens.
Okay, so to sum up those 5 steps to healing again, first one was a willingness to heal. The second one was going through whatever your experiences of death, having to take some time to really experience what's going on for you. The third is a good foundation of self-care, self-love. The fourth is to figure out and let go of all of the beliefs you have that will keep you stuck in grief, all of the beliefs about why you need your grief. Completely undo and let go of those. And the fifth is to take the time to look all the way around death, to see the positive side, to see the gifts and the beauty and the meaning that you haven't seen. When you have fully done those, when you've fully gone through those 5 steps, you will know what true healing looks like. You will have reached a place of complete healing around grief. So if you have anything you'd like to comment on, ask, add, then just pop it down below. I'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, I look forward to hearing from you soon. I look forward to talking to you soon. Much love.